Hey guys, you're listening to the Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast, where we talk about uncaging your divinely gifted wild heart to be as free and expansive as you were born to be. My goal is to use our stories, guest interviews, and your questions to tease out what has been keeping your wild heart under wraps. I'm your host, Mielle Fox, and together we will shatter the myths of our old stories to set our wild heart free. So thanks for choosing you and showing up today. Welcome back to another episode of Energy of the Untamed Heart. My guest today is Sam Mitchell, and I'm very excited to have today's talk. Sam has a website called autismrocksandrolls.com, as well as his own podcast. He's been on TED Talks. He's got quite the following, many downloads, and he also has a nonprofit to bring awareness to the collective that being technically diagnosed with some form of a challenge mentally, be it ADHD, autism, or any other list of titles that we like to apply, that one can have a completely successful, joyful, blissful existence. So we're going to dig in a little bit about what this means and what it means to Sam and what he can share with our listeners. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on, buddy.
Absolutely. So, in your bio, you describe yourself as a high functioning human being on the autism spectrum. I really struggle with applying labels for people because what is one person's challenge is another person's gift. So, I'm curious how that perspective sits with you and how you've moved through what other people might consider challenges.
Oh boy, you're like my mother. I say that because her and I have different views on that. Her view is she's like different than what? Like I say, it is a form of different thinking, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But she says different than what? Because we all think differently. And to a point, I could see where her point is. But my view is it is a different way of thinking. I'm more of a realistic thinker than a kind of a, I don't want to say delusional thinker, but try to not ignore the real side because it is. I mean, I don't know anyone else that could talk about professional wrestling for 20 hours. I know I could, but I don't know a person who can as well. They might be able to do it for 5 hours, but not 20.
That's probably, well, I'll give you my end of it. I love horses. I have horses. My life is horses, and I could literally talk for 20 hours about horses. Could somebody else do the same? I question. I'm not so sure they could, but I can absolutely appreciate the differences in how do we say is somebody different, is somebody not different, and your mom saying different from what, and that makes me think about like who made the yardstick? What is the yardstick that we choose to compare ourselves to? Like who came up with that?
Right. Well, since you're obsessed with horses, I'll tell you I've ridden a horse before.
Awesome. Yeah. So it's interesting. I'm curious, were you diagnosed as a younger child, as an adult?
As a younger child, I was 4 years old when I was diagnosed with autism. I
Mm-hmm.
showed classic symptoms, apparently. The symptoms I showed mainly were loud noises, not liking them, and if you said my name, I want to look at you. I didn't play the eye contact game. Still not the best at it. I can do it virtually, but in person, I'm probably gonna look off in the space.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel that that impacts how you move through your world or how school has been for you as a child compared to now?
Nah, nah. I just don't pay attention to it.
Okay. And what made you decide to create a podcast and a nonprofit?
Well, I started to join my high school's media club, and I fell in love with it so much I decided to start a podcast. And that was
Mm-hmm.
when Autism Rocks and Rolls was born. I didn't want to wait till college, which is where I'm at now, to expand my skills in the media side because I feel like I could do the skills and have a head start, as they say. But the nonprofit side kind of grew on its own because I was expecting a few hits here and there, but 20 turned into 40, 40 turned into 60, 60 turned to 100. Now all of a sudden, we're having people wanting to reach out and sponsor the show. Okay, cool. And I didn't know you could sponsor a podcast. I thought that was just for radio and television for advertisements.
Sure.
Then all of a sudden, people are wanting to say, "Hey, you want to start a board?" Okay, don't know what it is, but sure, let's start it. And it was a person who knew me very well, and he wanted to help me get him equipment. Then he wanted to start a board all of a sudden, is what happened. And then next thing you know, we're playing an event. Hey, we do a gala. Okay, don't know what a gala is, but let's go for it. The next thing you know, in 2022, I'm getting invited to speak in Oklahoma and share my story. Okay, never done a big speaking engagement before on a stage. I've done little ones here and there in school, but nothing anything spectacular like that.
What I really love in how you're describing your story is it's basically I'm open and I'm curious with no preconceived attachment or judgment about what is it. I'm just like, hey, you want to do a podcast? Sure. Hey, you want to be on a board? Let's give it a whirl. Hey, do you want to do a gala? No clue what it is, but why not? And that following the breadcrumbs, if you want to call it that, and being open to, hey, let's just give this a try because why not? I think that is absolutely a contributor to why your cause and your voice is being heard in a ripple effect way. Like you said it yourself, started with 20, went to 40, went to 60, and it's grown and it's grown. Your statistics on your bio are phenomenal. 20,000 downloads. I don't know how old your podcast is, but that's phenomenal.
I may do the math wrong, but 2025 minus 2019.
Oh, I don't know what that is. 6 years, maybe? Yeah, just under 6 years. So
There you go.
that's,
That's how long it
yeah,
lasted.
yeah,
Well, it's
that's,
still going.
it's fabulous. It's fabulous. And I think that's, people say, oh, what difference can I make in the world? And because sometimes we feel like, oh, we're just one individual, we're one person, how much of what I say or what I do is going to impact somebody else? And the reality is, you're probably not hitting 8 billion people in one hit, but if you're changing somebody's world, one person at a time, you're changing the world. Absolutely.
That's that. That's my goal when I lay in bed. Is if I could change one person's life and make them feel better about themselves or give them hope, I'm happy.
Absolutely. And I see you doing it. I've gone through your website, I've checked in on your podcast and you're doing it. You're absolutely doing it one person at a time and it builds and it grows and when you're open to receiving the goodness that's out there, the opportunities show up like your friend saying, "Let's do the board, let's have the gala, let's spread the word." Yeah. Do you find that media platform is more comfortable for you than speaking on a public stage venue?
It could be. I think it's the same, truthfully, because you're still speaking to an audience. It's just one's consuming the information virtually, and the other's consuming information via in person. So
Mhm.
I don't see a big difference, but I could see where someone else could see a difference because I know a lot of people have public speaking fear, and I think more people, if it was virtual, would speak with that fear and do it better than an in person one.
Yep. I could see just I don't think you ruffle very easily, so I could absolutely see that you would excel at both platforms, virtually and in person. But I hear you. There are some people that the fear of standing up publicly in front of a group makes them hesitant to really speak their truth and what they want to say and spread the word. And I just don't get that sense with you. I get the sense that your purpose is so strong for you. It doesn't matter how you're getting the word out as long as you're getting the word out.
Right. Well, I've been judged too when I've public speak before for 16 years. At this point, it's sad to admit, but it's true. I'm used to it. And if I walked on a stage and I got booed, I got booed. It would have been nothing new, but it is what it is.
It is what it is. And at the same time, I think you're fully aware of where what you say, I just ignore it. I think you've reached that place within yourself where the booing isn't about you. You're there to show up, voice what you have to voice, say what you have to say. And I don't think if people are not receiving that, it isn't that, because honestly, how many of them really know you on a deeper level? So, what's the booing really about? It's oftentimes not about you or me as the speaker. It's about how they're choosing to receive the information. So to have the bravery to keep showing up, keep showing up, keep showing up, kudos to you. People need to hear it. People need to know that just because you may not process information exactly the same as the next person, that uniqueness is what makes each of us extremely specific in how we're supposed to show up in the world.
Right, exactly. I can testify to that.
So, if you had to say, what do you find more of a challenge than not as you're bringing your message forward, what would you say that might be for you?
Well, I think it's getting the word out when it comes to professional because I think it's so frustrating that, in my view, I have to go and find conferences. I don't mind doing it; it's fun, but at points and get frustrated because I just wish more people would want to hear my message and want to hear me speak. I was keynote speaker in Daniels, West Virginia, a while back ago. Do you know who found me? Not me. I didn't find them. They found me. I want more conferences where they find me instead of me finding them.
And I think that does happen once the reach gets to a certain place. Like for me, I do this little podcast that you're on. It's new to me. It's not even 2 years old. Oh, I don't even know how many downloads there are. It certainly isn't 20,000. And I probably have a core group of folks that like to listen. But is my reach as big as somebody who speaks on the world stage? Probably not. But again, to me, I think my message attracts the people who need to hear what I have to say, just like I think your message, frequency energetically wise, pulls the people who need to hear what you have to say. And the bigger you start to grow, more people are going to pass the word along. And then I think that's the place where people will be seeking you out versus you seeking them out.
And you're right to a point, but I'm not a guy who complains. I do what I can do. And if it involves me being on a computer and talking to people, so be it.
Yeah. But that's
Because
the
as I said before,
flexibility.
it is fun. It is fun to do.
Yeah, it's absolutely. That's why I do this. It's a blast. I get to meet people from all over the world. I have in-depth conversations about things that maybe I wouldn't normally be talking about if I was just sitting here having a cup of coffee. And so it's absolutely really great to have the capacity to use technology to reach out and touch more people across the world. And I think sometimes you look at your, oh, what do we want to call it? Your measurements of who's watching what, who's downloading what. And yeah, the metrics matter to a point, but I think behind the metrics, if you're consistent in your message and keep showing up and keep showing up, that's the thing that makes it grow to me. Do you find that as you're moving through growing your business or growing your
I can say that,
nonprofit?
sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. Yeah. So if there was something that you really wanted a listener to really hone in on, a message real specifically, is there one thing that stands out for you that you think is really key in sharing the word?
I think people need to understand those on the spectrum are not what society thinks, because society thinks we're broken and incapable of doing something. That's not true all the way. And it's not true at all because here's the problem what society has. They think of one population of the spectrum, and it's the mindset of 3 year olds. The society calls it low functioning. I hate that term because I think you're undermining their talents no matter where you are. But in my view, the ones that have the mindset of 3 year olds is what those on who aren't on the autism spectrum believe are just one population of the autism, and that's it. Like they can't go to the bathroom on their own. They can't brush their teeth on their own. They can't walk on their own. They have to use a wheelchair because of neurological issues. They can't even understand their name. If you try to ask them, hey, can you spell, I'm trying to have a name here, BJ for me? They would say, I don't know. Or they don't understand it's appropriate to basically give someone touch their head because that's what they do. And they think it's acceptable to do that. And I know in retrospect, it's not, but some people with that mindset have that view. And I'm not going to lie to you, that's some people on the spectrum, but that's not everybody on the spectrum. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I can go to the bathroom. I can brush my teeth. I can also go to college and work, get a
Yeah.
job. And then there's some people who are on the middle end of the autism spectrum where they might have the mindset of 8-year-olds. So maybe, for example, they live with mom and dad for the rest of their life, but they can work at Wendy's.
Yes. And I think there's no judgment about where is one on that spectrum, and is one maybe more challenging than another depending on what's one person's capacity for executing certain tasks maybe. Call that going to the bathroom, brushing your teeth, knowing your name, living independently. But I really see the description that people talk about, and I'm so glad you're talking about this. With autism is very much like a blanket term to me. It's sort of like, oh, if you describe somebody as having on the spectrum, well, that's great, but it's called a spectrum for a reason because there's a range of expression from a low range to medium range to a high range to however that's why it's called a spectrum. The word spectrum indicates or means having multiple high to low, low to high ranges within whatever you're talking about, whether you're talking about music, autism, I don't know, blindness, physical acuity, it doesn't matter. Everything, if you have something that's listed as a spectrum, that by virtue should mean there's more than one way it's going to show up.
Oh, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's in the name. Spectrum doesn't mean one height, it means multiple heights.
Yes. And do you find that what's available to individuals who are diagnosed at being at whatever level of the spectrum they may or may not be on, that available supportive services vary? So, for example, let's say if you're I don't like the term low functioning, high functioning, medium functioning. I just don't care for the labeling. But let's say somebody who requires tremendous support, maybe they're at that eighth grade level. Do you, or did you, since you've already gone through grade school and high school and all of that, find that support services were available or difficult?
So here's the problem we're running into, I think. We have some sources out there, but there's not enough. I had an interview recently with one of my previous guests, and he stated that there should be multiple teachers teaching at the variety of people with the spectrum. Now, my school kind of had that, so my school kind of looked like, and this is I wasn't involved, but this is what I saw when I bypassed the special ed classroom when I just saw in the room. A lot. So there was a main teacher, right, and then there's a TA. So the teacher would teach the would teach the special education children with maybe less support needs regular school, right? It would just be a little slower. Like maybe it would be English a little slower, math a little slower. But then you have my friends, and I am friends with them. They're amazing people in my view, good big hearts, who they need higher support needs. So what the TA would do is instead of learning about, you know, try to think of a word here. What could you learn in school? Perpendicular lines, or trying to think what it's called. It's a squirrel that ran blank the tree. I can't remember the sentence, but it's like something like that. Subject verb agreement. They will learn time.
Hmm. So
And I
the
feel like there needs to be more. There needs to be more of that. And the teacher needs to be teaching at different levels. And you have one teacher teaching the ones that have the mindset of 3-year-olds, another teacher teaching the middle side, and then another teacher teaching the ones who have the mindset of 19-year-olds. Realistically, because I don't think it should be one teacher trying to teach every person.
I agree.
Because each case of someone with autism is a different case.
And I think where the struggle is, of course, it comes into how do we fund our education system? How do we get our qualified teachers for all these different needs? And how is that supported? So, knowing that, my next question to you would be, Do you feel, or would it be helpful if there was some way to connect with one's local government, town, legislature, school board, whatever that is, to open the conversation of how can we best service these different levels for the children?
Well, I can't do that because of personal reasons. I don't have the patience for the government. Really, I'm not going to lie to you. And in my
Many of
opinion, the
us
government,
don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But in my view, the government wouldn't listen. They'd be like, okay, and then go along with their bills and worrying about what can they do to improve the country, not the special needs part. But I do know someone who I learned that they go to, and this is impressive. They have Down syndrome. She literally goes to the Capitol, and she's not happy about the Special Olympics getting taken away from some people. She'll go to the Capitol and talk to legislators about the Special Olympics and
Yes.
tell them you need to keep this.
Yeah. So again, I think it has to start, it absolutely has to start somewhere. It has to start, whether that start on a local level, like in your town. Sometimes it's got to get chunked down into smaller pieces to start to make the roadway in to make the changes. When I was, I'm a lot older than you. When I was in grade school, we didn't have TAs, we didn't have special ed opportunity. In fact, I don't even think they used much terminology for kids who struggled in learning areas, whether it was secondary to autism or secondary to pick whatever you want, a reading challenge or a arithmetic challenge or whatever it was. And I do see there's more potential available assistance, but the other thing that I see in our local community is exactly what you described, which is it's like one person trying to do everything. And a lot of that, I think, boils down to access and funding. So I'm really pleased that you're getting sponsors on your podcast because you got to start somewhere. You got to get the word out. And I'm so grateful to you that you want to speak loud and clear for people to hear because it makes a difference. I don't think there are too many podcasts out there that are doing what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm wearing it today, actually. This is what my logo looks like, in case you're interested.
I see this. I love it. Love it. So
Thank you.
listen, tell us, I'll put it in the show notes, but tell us the best place for people to reach out and find out what you're doing. Is it your
Well, you
website?
can find me on your favorite media platform, not a hard guy to find. If you Google me with search engine optimization, something will pop up out there. But the website is autismrocksandrolls.com, and that's pretty much everything you need to know about me and
Perfect.
my work.
Perfect. And if somebody is looking to have you come speak, that is where they should go.
Yep, I got a contact page. If you want to know about speaking, I'm not afraid to tell you that. I do have to charge because of keeping the funds in.
Sure.
And my speaking fee is $500, and it adds to where you are. So if you live in Washington, you want me to come and speak, that's going to be a lot of money.
So I think what you're doing on your podcast and getting the word out is so key, so key. And I think it's absolutely a little bit like this trickle down. Like you're coming on my podcast and someone's going to listen to it on the platform and hear it. And that's how it's going to increase the market base for everybody, for you, for me, for everybody. And I think your message is so vital, so vital.
Well, well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, and I'll get all the show notes ready for you. Thank you, Sam. All right, folks, that wraps up another visit here on Energy of the Untamed Heart podcast. Sam is an amazing human. I'm so grateful to him. So glad that he's getting the word out. All of us, whether we call them challenges or not, they are divine gifts that we are all given, and there's no reason we can't show up in service and purpose in the world. So, Sam, thank you for taking the time today. I so appreciate you.
Of course, anytime.